two things that are vitally important. You need to be exceptionally good at what you do, and people need to enjoy working with you. If you have those two things, you're never going to be starving. You're never going to be looking for work. If you all of a sudden you become available, people will find, oh, I got to introduce you to so-and-so. I got to introduce you to so-and-so. That's what happened to me. When I got laid off, someone came, the senior vice president of communications for that company said, hey, Andrew, I own my own business. I'm going to create a role for you because I didn't want to lay you off. I had to, my hands were forced, but I own my own company and I want to hire you for over there. You'll be a freelancer for us over there. I was like, great, because she knew I was exceptionally good at what I did and I was good to work with. I'm a professional and I'm an enjoyable person to work with. Those two things are vitally important.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Andrew Murdoch. And Andrew started his journey as a B average student in high school, not popular, or smart. It was more introverted, but he made it through nonetheless. And didn't go to college, but rather went and got certified as a firefighter in Canada. From there, also became a scuba diver instructor, found a love for travel, and then after a coworker died, decided to switch gears a bit and went and did Coast Guard rescue for diving for a period of time, and then shifted to a few blue collar jobs. Then had a period of time where reevaluated life and what he wanted to do. So got into a telephone sales position and did that for a period of time. Worked for a tech startup. Hit rock bottom, and had a marriage ending, and that was sleeping on an air mattress, and then switched gears, became obsessed with YouTube, got fit mentally, physically, and with the right mindset, got into consulting, and led to where he's at today. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks so much, Devin. That was a mouthful. I'm impressed you were able to get through all of that, but yeah, it's not your traditional coming up, I suppose, for an entrepreneur.
No, it was. I don't know. There is a traditional. So I think that after having done almost or coming up on 600 episodes with a lot of different entrepreneurs, I think that the lesson learned is there isn't one path or one right way to do it. And so, but no, with that, why don't we go ahead and so I gave the 45 or 30-second, however long it took me, version of the journey. But let's rewind and unpack that a bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started, being an introvert in high school.
Yeah, I was an uber introvert in high school, always had a really small group of friends. I was definitely not the cool kid, not the popular kid, not the smart kid, not the jock. I just kept a really small circle. When I graduated high school, I still think back to this time and wonder what the hell was I thinking, but my mom convinced me to upgrade for a year. How many people do you know graduate high school and then go back? So essentially what happened was I didn't really have a lot of direction in my life at the time. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, like so many 17-year-olds. And my mom sat me down and said, listen, here in BC, Canada, it's law to have free education until you turn 18. And I was still 17. So she convinced me to go back to school and upgrade for an entire year. The high school I graduated from was really, really tiny. So we had our mandatory classes, and then there were only 3 electives. Band, art, and drama. So if you didn't have a certain predisposition, you didn't have a lot of choices. Basically, a lot of people ended up in art, shall we say. So I upgraded, went to a different high school, upgraded for a whole year, took all kinds of classes that my small high school didn't have access to. Like I was taking AutoCAD drafting, I took graphic design, I took film and TV. I took all kinds of courses that, I just didn't have access to. And upgraded for a year. And that was the same year when my mom figured out that there was this local firefighting recruitment program available. And then all of a sudden I got turned on to that. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I think being a firefighter would be a lot of fun. So started going through the application process, and they denied me because I wasn't old enough. And my mom called up the fire, and once again, mom to the rescue. My mom called up the fire chief and said, hey, listen, he turns 18 during your recruitment program. Would you not at least let him in, because then he becomes legal age while he's taking his training? And the fire chief agreed. He was like, oh yeah, for sure. So took the program, graduated as a fully certified firefighter. So at one point in time, I was probably the youngest firefighter in BC or the youngest firefighter in Canada. It was kind of weird because I was upgrading for that year, right? So I was the only high school kid that had a pager. Yeah, back in those days, it was pagers, and for a paid on-call firefighter. And the teachers just kind of got a laugh out of me because every once in a while I'd be sitting in class and then the tones would go off and I'd rush out of class and go jump in my car and go race to the fire hall to respond to some kind of emergency. And because I had already graduated high school, there was no, there wasn't exactly a lot of stress about missing too much school. And I managed to get good grades that year anyways. So that was an experience and a half. And then after that year was done, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And there was not a lot of fire departments hiring 18, 19-year-old kids. I got a lot of feedback saying that we're looking for people with more life experience. So I don't know if things have changed now, but at least that's what I was told back then. And I said, okay, more life experience. What am I going to do? So I had actually become a scuba diver at age 14 because I grew up watching James Bond movies and I just thought scuba diving was cool. So I ended up going back to the very same dive college and got certified as an instructor. So by the time I was 21, I was a fully fledged firefighter / scuba instructor. And I learned that there's actually a lot of crossover between those two career paths. In both situations, you're wearing exposure protection. You always follow a buddy system. You never go anywhere by yourself. There's a heightened knowledge of ropes and knots. I mean, you're breathing compressed air. There's just tons and tons of similarities between those two lifestyles. And because I was now a fully fledged scuba instructor, I started traveling the world working as a diver, and then eventually landed up on cruise ships. I worked on cruise ships, Royal Caribbean for 3 years, eventually turned 25, thought, man, maybe I should take another career path that's perhaps a little bit more serious. Looking back now, I don't know if that was a crazy thought or not, because I had a lot of fun working on cruise ships, traveling all around the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Went back to Canada and thought, yeah, I want to get back into my roots and get back to firefighting. So I had to go to college to get my 1001, my NFPA 1001, and found a job as an industrial firefighter up north in the oil patch for a huge health and safety company called HSE, stood for Health, Safety, and Environment. So I got paid to keep people safe in minus 40-degree weather. It was awful, where you had to go through specialized training because otherwise water would freeze. In fact, in one terrible shift, the propane tank I was using to run my heater actually started causing me problems, because I learned the hard way that liquid propane will start to solidify in minus 44 degrees Celsius. So pretty obvious how I found out that the hard way. I only did that for about 9 months, and then ended up getting my butt back to Vancouver because those temperatures were just a little too crazy for me, and wanted to join a municipal fire department. But getting a job as a firefighter in Canada is a very sought after position. So I knew I needed to do something in the meantime, and ended up working for CN Rail. I worked as a train conductor, moving freight trains for 4 years. I did that for a long time, moving sulfur, potash, grain, oil, automobiles, like you name it, we moved it. And Canada is a very resource heavy, resource rich country. And all of those resources need to be shipped to the coast to be shipped all around the world, right? And you said this in the intro. Sadly, only about a year and a half on the job, my colleague, my coworker, was killed on the job. He left behind a wife and 2 little girls. His wife had just given birth to their second daughter, and their eldest daughter has the Down syndrome. We all took that news pretty hard. I went through training with him. We weren't super close because we were stationed at different terminals, and we all kind of just congregated around the people that we knew we were going to be working with. But I remember having a couple of beers with the guy. And so when the news spread what had happened, it all hit us pretty hard for obvious reasons. I looked at the industry differently. I looked at the job differently. And we all took that news in our own ways. But I certainly certainly look at that industry differently even now. And unfortunately, there were times where our management, or they're called train masters in that industry, there were times where I was told to break rules. And they never specifically say, go break this rule. They'll ask you to do something. And then I'm like, I'm on my heels going, but I can't do it that way because of rule, blah, 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 rule 115, rule, whatever. And so there were 3 different occasions where I actually had to report supervisors, one supervisor on 2 different situations, and then a second supervisor once. And on all 3 occasions, when I reported them to the safety hotline, I came out on top. However, when you report your managers to the safety hotline, you end up getting a target on your ass because you got them in trouble, right? And unfortunately, that just created a really toxic environment. And like I said, I just looked at in the entire industry differently because my colleague was killed on the job, and I was like, no. I just knew at that time that I wasn't going to work here for the rest of my life. And these supervisors need to be held to a higher standard. So I was happy to put myself on the line like that, whereas some of my other fellow train conductors, they wouldn't report the supervisors to the safety hotline for fear of retaliation. It became a really toxic environment. So funny enough, I ended up leaving that job because I just couldn't take the BS anymore, and I was trying to find a safer environment to work. And funny enough, that's when the Coast Guard, the Canadian Coast Guard, was looking to hire rescue divers. It was their first time looking to hire divers in 5 years. And a lot of people were like, Andrew, I thought you were looking for a safer job. And actually, being a rescue diver for the Coast Guard is way safer than being a railway train conductor, because when you're a train conductor, oftentimes you're working somewhere by yourself. Meaning, and this is going to sound awful, I know, meaning if something were to happen to you, no one's going to know what happened until they find the body. Okay, like that's literally how it works, right? Or they're gonna wonder why you're not answering your radio. Whereas in the Coast Guard, as a rescue diver, you're constantly being checked on by your colleagues, by your coworkers. Everyone's watching each other's backs. You're never anywhere by yourself, except for when you're underwater. However, you have a panel operator who's monitoring your progress and is in full radio contact with you at every given second, right? So you're never truly alone. So I did that for, I think, I did that for 2 years. Ended up leaving that industry simply because they adopted a brand new payroll software called Phoenix, and it broke. The whole system broke. 33% of my income evaporated overnight. And our management couldn't tell us when we would be able to accept payment, when we would receive our what we're due. Anytime we brought it up, management would just give us the old shoulder shrug. It shows up when it shows up. I learned the hard way that when you work for the government, they can break the law and no one is held accountable. No one is responsible. No one loses their job. No one, this is how it works, And because I was still relatively new in my career, and I was living at the time in Canada's most expensive city by far, Vancouver, it became obvious to me that this career was no longer for me anymore. I wanted a job that I could enjoy, or a career path that I could enjoy, but still was able to cover the bills, right? So from there, that was I did blue collar job for years and years and years. And when I left the Coast Guard, I had an opportunity to join a financial education firm and get into telephone sales. Talk about a massive, massive pivot. And I only did that job for 6 months because another better opportunity presented itself. But let me tell you, doing telephone sales, I was able to cut my teeth and learn how the world works in many ways. And I look back on those times very fondly. I can think of some really embarrassing moments, just saying things to people over the phone, not knowing what the hell I was doing. But yeah, I cut my teeth on that. And sales is obviously a fantastic skill that everyone at some point in their lives should really refine, because ultimately we're all in sales at some point, whether you're trying to convince your partner what movie to see that night or what to eat for dinner, or you're actually doing it for a career choice. We're all in sales. So it was a really valuable experience for me to learn a little bit about human behavior, human psychology. And from there,
just curious, or just on that, because I mean, that, or sales, and especially like telephone sales, seems like it's a pretty good shift. Makes sense, looking for something different. But how did you land on that? Was it just, hey, I'm looking for something completely different than what I've done, and this was a opportunity that came along, or kind of what led you in that direction?
That's a really good question. So, like I said, I was doing blue collar jobs for years. And for a long time, I always had this feeling that I didn't really belong because I would go to work and you're always talking about, hey, what'd you do for the weekend? What'd you do last night? Like you're getting to know your colleagues, right? And I really resonated, and a big part of me still feels like a blue collar person at heart. However, I would go to work and I would want to talk about things like real estate investing. I flew to Edmonton last week to attend an investment conference, or these are the podcasts that I'm listening to. These are the books that I'm reading. And the guys I worked with, they just, they didn't really like respond. Like they didn't like join me in those conversations. They wanted to talk about other things, and there's just nothing wrong with that. So I always felt like in those moments, I didn't quite belong in those circles. I loved the work. I just didn't really always resonate with the people I was working with. And so one of those financial education companies that I had been a customer of, they were hiring. They were hiring for a telephone sales, someone to join their team. And so I applied, and they had always liked me in all of our interactions over the years. So they're like, yeah, Andrew, like, right. And I found that as my first out of like a blue collar type role. And I was able to step into like my first kind of white collar type position, which was a really great opportunity for me because I didn't go to college or university like a quote normal person did. I remember back in high school going my own route, becoming a firefighter, becoming a scuba instructor. One of my closest friends at the time who did do the normal route, he's like, geez, you just broke the mold, Andrew. You didn't do the normal. Like everyone else in my class went to college, went to university, and went that traditional route, and I totally broke the mold. I didn't go the normal route. I was never the kind of person to follow the crowd. I always kind of carved my own path. So yeah, then when I left the telephone sales position, I became obsessed with learning more about exponential technologies. So I breezed past this one. So after I left that role, I actually became an insurance agent. I sold insurance, a special kind of supplemental insurance. And I did that for, I think, 9 months to a year. And because I was always into financial education. And when I came across this particular product, I was like, wow, this is amazing. More people should know about this. There were all these times where this particular product would have paid me a benefit when I was doing these blue collar jobs. And while I was working with those blue collar jobs, if I received an injury, sure, there's workers' comp, but there was always limitations. And anyways, long story short, I saw this product that really more people needed to know more about. So I became for the first time, a financial professional. And when I was having a conversation with another financial professional over the phone, I'll never forget this chat. I'm talking to, and he's very successful, way more successful than me. I've always had the mindset of always surround myself with people more successful than me, right? Never be the smartest person in the room, right? Success leaves clues. What did you do to achieve success? I want to do things like similar to what you did to achieve a similar level of success, right? And I'm talking to him about Amazon, because this is back like 2017, right? And I say to him, like, man, if 10 years ago we had the foresight to invest in this silly little book company called Amazon, how different would our lives be right now had we aggressively invested in Amazon? So we started having a conversation about exponential technologies. What should we be investing in right now that 10 years from now will be completely changing the game? So we're talking about 3D printers. We're talking about driverless cars. We talked about blockchain, right? And he says to me, and this one conversation changed my whole life. He says to me, have you heard about this thing called Hashgraph? And I said, no, what's that? He's like, you got to watch this Mike Maloney video. I'll send you the link. So Mike Maloney, for those of you who don't know, Mike Maloney was one of Rich Dad's advisors for Robert Kiyosaki. He's the commodity expert, right? He's got great content on YouTube, by the way. So I go check out this video to learn about this thing called Hashgraph. It's a distributed ledger technology, just like blockchain is. And it can do everything blockchain can do, but it can do a whole laundry list of things that blockchain can't do. So I start learning about this technology, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Here's another one of those things. And right in the beginning of Mike Maloney's video, that as of right now, I think has like over 1.5 million views or whatever, at first I was like, I'm not interested. But as the documentary goes on and on and on, by the end of it, I was like, holy man, I need to look into this because this is absolutely going to disrupt the financial services industry. So I had to make a decision. Either I'm going to learn about this new technology and be in a position to take advantage of it, or I could just put my blinders on, pretend I never learned about this technology, just keep being an insurance agent, right? It's obvious which one I chose. The more I learned about the technology, the more I realized more people need to learn about this technology. So I started hosting, like for free. I joined up to be an ambassador for them, right? So I'm downtown Vancouver, and I started hosting these meetups, and pretty big deal for an introvert like me. I would stand at the front of the room and give these large presentations to people, to groups as high as 100 people at a time. And when I started telling Hedera Hashgraph what I was doing, they were like, "You did what?" And I said, "Yeah, I hosted a meetup for you at the New York Institute of Technology, because NYIT, their second largest campus is downtown Vancouver." And they're like, "You did what?" And I said, "Yeah, why? Like, what's the big deal? Isn't all of your ambassadors doing this?" And they're like, "No, we wish all of our ambassadors were doing this." So just because I was always putting my best foot forward, they ended up like had a job opportunity. I applied. I kind of was semi-qualified to do the job. And they hired me because they knew I was already really passionate about their mission and their technology. So I became their first ever social media manager, and I did that for a couple of years. And then they ended up going through a massive layoff. They laid off like 11 people all at once, right at the beginning of COVID, right before COVID, I should say. And then and that allowed me to do some marketing that I was actually a lot more passionate about, YouTube marketing. So I started going a lot deeper into YouTube marketing because YouTube helped me completely change my life. I kind of breezed past this as well, but in 2018, when I started working for Hedera Hashgraph, I was in a very dark time in my life. This is probably one of the main reasons why a lot of people invite me to speak on their podcasts. I was married to someone I couldn't stand, and I found myself in a position that I never thought I would ever find myself in. I never thought I was that guy to end a marriage, but I was in a really toxic environment, and I knew something had to change. So I ended the marriage and left her. She got my bed, she got my kitchen stuff, she got everything, and I had nowhere to go. So a friend of mine had a spare bedroom, but there was no bed. And I said, "Don't worry about it. I got an air mattress in the storage locker. Let me go grab it." So I was sleeping on an air mattress and felt like the world's biggest loser because I struggling with tons of debt, both mine and my ex-wife's that never paid me. She never paid me back. We were going through counseling and all that stuff, and she swore up, down, and sideways that, she's obligated to pay that back. She'll pay it back. She never did. And I just knew that I always knew at the back of my mind that was going to be the case, right? So it fell on my shoulders to get myself out of this mess, get out of my debt and her debt, right? So I'm sleeping on this air mattress, or I should say I'm laying down on this air mattress, staring up at the ceiling, feeling like the world's biggest loser, and realized, why am I still in Canada's most expensive country, or most expensive city? It didn't make any sense. I'm working remotely for the first time in my life, or one of the first times in my life. I should be able to travel and reduce my living expenses to the point where I can get ahead financially. So this is not an easy story to tell, but I know it helps people, so I continue to tell it. And so I two things really helped me turn my life around. Getting obsessed with YouTube, right? Absolutely helped me get my life in order. I was able to get my mindset right. That's the most important thing. Get my health and fitness right, get my finances right. Just because I started obsessing over certain YouTube channels, and in some cases I can point to a specific video that helped me turn my entire life around. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the YouTube platform that I will never be able to fully repay. I don't know where I would be right now had I not become obsessed with YouTube, and it scares the living shit out of me when I think about that. The other thing that helped me turn my life around was becoming a digital nomad. I started booking these one-way flights and bouncing around the world, living on my friends' couches at first. And then I started adopting this thing called house sitting, because I was able to house sit for people who want to go on these lengthy vacations, but they can't take their pets with them. So I was like, oh, wait a second. So I can live in someone's house rent-free I don't have to pay internet, don't have to pay power, don't have to pay utilities. And I was able to get ahead financially way faster that way. So that was an amazing lifestyle that I was able to adopt for years. I lived in Canada, the US, Mexico, Spain, England, Scotland, Costa Rica, predominantly house sitting for these random people and helping them take care of their fur babies, making sure that their house is secure while I'm improving my financial situation in a massive way. And then, yeah, getting back on track here, fast forwarding a little bit. I was a YouTube consultant for years, helping people get ahead, helping businesses specifically. I don't work with influencers or entertainers. I work with businesses. Very quickly, it became obvious to me that there was a massive gap in the marketplace to provide done-for-you services. A lot of businesses out there, they don't have the knowledge, the expertise, or even the desire to hire an entire creative department to grow their YouTube content. So it was like, you know, it was a light bulb moment for me. So a little over a year and a half ago, back in January 1st, 2022, I decided to launch a done-for-you solution for businesses that so now they can just outsource their people, processes, and problems to me. They can just worry about their business and serve their clients. All they have to do is record content for us, and then they just wash their hands of it. We take care of the rest. We do the thumbnails, the titles, the project management, the YouTube optimization. They're totally hands off from their YouTube program. And then we build their YouTube channels on their behalf, which drives them credibility, authority, reach, influence, ultimately more leads and more sales. And they love it. They just love it. So that's that brings you all the way up to where we are today. You did the 45-second version, and I probably did the 25-minute version, or however long it took me to say that.
Hey, that worked. No, that was a great, fun journey to hear. Lots of different pivots and different directions you took, and definitely was a fun walkthrough. So now, as we have reached the present day of your journey, and we're already reaching towards the end of the podcast, we'll have to have you back on so we can have a further discussion on a few items, and maybe pick your brain a little bit about YouTube. But at least for today, I always like to wrap up each episode with the same two questions. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, really great question. That I think this specific painful moment in my life, I'm going to cheat a little bit. It's one, but it's two. It's two things. I undervalued the service that I provided this client. I agreed to do a 100% commission deal. And I only agreed to that after I had access to his channel and realized that it was a bit of a mess and that he had done all kinds of damage to his channel over years. And I knew it wasn't going to be an easy fix. And I had already agreed to a compensation package that was absolutely unfair. And but I had given my word. So I pushed forward. And whenever you agree to undervalue your time, you will immediately resent the person that you are working for. So don't ever do that. That was a big problem. But then, having said all of this, is the most embarrassing part I can share. He ended up not paying me even what he owed me. It was a really less than honest person to do business with. And to this day, I've never seen a single penny from him. So that's why I'm kind of cheating here, and I'm giving you two things. So number one, never undervalue never undervalue yourself with regards to the service, the value you bring your client, your customers. But number two, make sure you're doing business with the right people. If your gut, and my gut was telling me for a long time, I don't know about this guy. I don't know about this guy. Should have listened to my gut. Should have listened to my gut. Make sure you're doing business with the right sort, the right people. You know, birds of a feather flock together. Make sure you're onboarding the right clients that will respect you, and you'll respect them, and there will be no resentment, and everyone will be treated with respect. If your gut is telling you, I don't know about this person, probably listen to your gut. Now, having said all of that, I had to go through that. I had to go through that painful experience because now I'm a much better entrepreneur, right? I was recently asked to speak at an event, found out that individual was going to be at that event. And I said to the event organizer, I'm like, you know what? Sorry, I can't agree to speaking at your event. I don't like associating myself with people like him. So I'm very, very careful around who I spend time with.
No, I
And
think that's
that's
definitely, and that's one of the hard, when you're starting out in a business, you're, I don't know, in quotes, desperate, or you're much willing to take on clients that you probably otherwise shouldn't or wouldn't. But you tend to rationalize or justify it, or you just do it out of need, so to speak. And yet that's usually when the mistakes come, or the lessons are learned. So I think that's a great piece of advice, or a good mistake to learn, and a great something to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you talk to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, geez. Oh, there's so much. Okay, what's the one piece?
Can't do 20 pieces. I'm sure there's a lot of pieces out there, but give them the number one that you would give them.
Well, it's so dependent on certain variables, isn't it? So I'm gonna go a certain route, hoping that this answers your question and brings real value to your listener, because I really do find a lot of people would love to start a business, become an entrepreneur, but they can't because they got kids they got to feed, they got bills, or they jump in with 2 feet without the proper base, and then they get themselves into trouble anyway. So let me back up. It's a different path for everyone. I shared my journey, very, very non-traditional, right? But like you said at the very beginning of this, you're almost at episode 600. Everyone has their own unique journey becoming an entrepreneur. I truly believe I'm only where I'm at right now because I started as an employee getting paid, cutting my teeth on YouTube marketing and learning the fundamentals, learning the basics, getting educated, but I was being paid, I was being compensated for my time. And then from there, I transitioned to become a freelancer, a contractor, right? So my rates went up and I had more of a track record, and my confidence went up. Everyone's climbing Cameron Herold says this better than anyone. Everyone's climbing 2 ladders at the same time. You're climbing your confidence ladder, which allows you to climb your skills ladder, right? And you climb your skills ladder, which climbs your confidence ladder. If you try climbing one ladder without climbing the other ladder, things become shaky and you're gonna fall and hurt yourself, right? So you got to climb both ladders at the same time. So I was an employee first, getting paid, cutting my teeth, developing skill sets, developing my understanding to know how to really bring real value. Then I graduated to be a freelancer and contractor. And again, went through a steep learning curve, learned refined my understanding, my skill sets to be further ensure I can bring real value to people at the end of the day, right? And when you're in a freelancer consultant aspect, there are 2 things that are vitally important. You need to be exceptionally good at what you do, and people need to enjoy working with you. If you have those 2 things, you're never going to be starving. You're never going to be looking for work. If you all of a sudden you become available, people will find, oh, I got to introduce you to so-and-so. I got to introduce you to so-and-so. That's what happened to me. When I got laid off, someone came, the senior vice president of communications for that company said, hey, Andrew, I own my own business. I'm going to create a role for you because I didn't want to lay you off. I had to, my hands were forced, but I own my own company and I want to hire you for over there. You'll be a freelancer for us over there. I was like, great, because she knew I was exceptionally good at what I did. And I was good to work with. I'm a professional and I'm an enjoyable person to work with. Those 2 things are vitally important. Then after I graduated from that, that's when I was ready to become an entrepreneur, become a business owner, and hire a team and start developing my skill sets. I kind of cheated answering your question, but that's the best answer I can give you for that.
It's all right. It was a great answer, even if you cheated a little bit. We'll forgive that or cheating. So awesome. Well, with that, now as we are wrapping up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
I really like how you worded that. ytera.com. ytera.com is our website. If you have any desire to work with us or work for us, I highly encourage you to check out our 3-year vivid vision, our vivid vision for 2025. If you like what you read there, then you probably are a good fit for us. If you don't like what you read there, fantastic. I'm sure there's another operation out there that's a better fit for you. But yeah, and then DMing me is probably your best bet would be LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn has a lot less trolls and haters and less professional isms than some of the other platforms out there. So LinkedIn is probably your best bet for DMing me.
Awesome. Well, definitely some great ways to connect. I encourage everybody to reach out, support a great business, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Andrew, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your patents or trademarks or anything else along your journey, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Andrew, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.